Welcome to the Tell Us Ellis podcast.
All right, everybody. It is one of the great days of the year. It is Super Bowl Sunday, a time when we get together with family and friends and watch the biggest football game of the year. And because the playoffs were happening and we were leading up to the Super Bowl, I started to do my rewind sessions, which looks at classic films, classic albums, and gives my perspective on it. And about a month ago, I started doing this with classic football movies. And I'm happy to wrap that up today. This will be the fourth football movie that I do, and I'm excited to talk about it. So we're going to get into it. Before we do, if you want to follow me on social media, please do so. You can follow me on X and on Instagram at TellUsEllisHQ. You can also find the recordings, all of the recordings on YouTube at Tell Us Ellis Media. You can also find me on Spotify, the Apple Podcasts, really any podcast software that you have. I'll be out there as Tell Us Ellis. Click the subscribe button. That would be very helpful. It tells me that people are enjoying it. People are watching it. For you, it also gets you, automatic downloads right to your phone. If you're getting in your car, you can look at recent episodes. These episodes will come up and you can hit play. I do it all the time. And yeah, it just makes it easy for you. If you want to be part of the show, join the show, ask questions, please email me, jamie@tellusellis.com. Look, it's been a couple of months and I've really enjoyed doing this and I'm getting a lot of great feedback, a lot of views on the podcast, a lot of subscriptions. Really appreciate that, to friends that I have out there and people that just like the podcast. So without further ado, let's get into this final Rewind Sessions football special, and we'll get into that now. All right, so before the Super Bowl turns football into the biggest spectacle in American sports, I wanted to rewind to a football movie where the game feels really different. This isn't about championships. It's not about glory. It's not about even playing on Sundays, but it's a film that means a lot to me and meant a lot to me growing up. I had a very good friend by the name of Pete McQuaid, Chet McQuaid. This was one of his favorite movies of all time, one of my favorite movies of all time. I can't tell you how many times we watched this movie. I mean, we could quote it back in the day. And that movie is All the Right Moves. It's a football movie where the dream isn't winning, it's about getting out. So this was a movie released back in 1983, and it sits quietly in the middle of the 80s teen movie era. It has love, heartbreak, rekindling, and then triumph. In the middle, you also get pressure, frustration, small town limits, and a very young Tom Cruise playing a character who knows that football might be his only exit. And even if that door is like just barely cracked open for him. So today on the Rewind Sessions, we're looking at All the Right Moves. We're going to look at where it fits in the teen movie canon, why it feels maybe a little grimmer than most of its peers, and why 4 decades later, I still love the movie. So let's take a minute to talk about the 80s teen movie landscape. And by the way, this is something I'm probably going to come back to time and time again. As I started reviewing this movie and looking at things, I just started going through, and I'll talk about it in just a little bit, all of those great teen movies in the 90s. So we'll talk about that. But the early 80s gave us very specific type of teen movie. Films that weren't just about being young. In many cases, they were about navigating adulthood before you were ready for it. I mean, just think about the range. You had Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which gives us boredom, sex, and realism. Teenagers acting like actual teenagers, and sometimes it became uncomfortably so. You had The Outsiders, which leans into class conflict and masculinity and fate and who gets out and who doesn't. You had the movie Say Anything, which is earnest and emotional, focused on ambition and vulnerability. And then there are the lighter kind of social mobility stories like Can't Buy Me Love, where popularity and status are the battlegrounds. All the Right Moves technically belongs to this group, but emotionally it feels like the outlier. There's very little comfort here. There's no mall culture, no fantasy of reinvention, and that's worth sitting with for a moment. So many 80s teen movies are about transformation, changing how you look, who you date, where you sit at lunch. All the Right Moves isn't interested in any of that. It's about whether transformation is even possible when your environment is working against you. And that's a much heavier question, and it's why this movie feels older than it is. The town itself feels heavy. It's a steel town, a place built on work, hierarchy, and limited opportunity. And football isn't an escape from that world, it's just embedded in it. And that's what makes this movie feel almost, I'd say almost more like a 70s movie than an 80s movie. It's closer to the spirit of Saturday Night Fever than it is Pretty in Pink. And it understands that sometimes ambition doesn't feel exciting, it feels desperate. I told you I'd talk about some of these 80s teen movies because I couldn't help myself. Like I said, this movie fits right within that 80s teen genre. It's maybe a little bit early. It's 1983. But as I went through kind of like my list of 80s teen movies and ones, I'm not going to say that this movie compares to, but I guess I would use this list to compare it against. Not that it's the same, but when you think about teen movies, here are the ones that I think about from the 80s. And I'll start with 1981, Endless Love. 1982, The Last American Virgin, which I think is still a hit. You can't find it easily anywhere today. In fact, I think the only place I found it was like small clips on YouTube. Also in 1982, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I must have watched that movie 100 times in the 80s. Flashdance, 1983. Some people say this movie, All the Right Moves, is the football equivalent of Flashdance. Flashdance also occurring in Pittsburgh, in a steel town. So some similarities there. Also in 1983, you had Private School. You had War Games, Matthew Broderick. You had Risky Business. Then you moved to 1984 and you have Footloose, 16 Candles, The Karate Kid. You move to 1985, you have The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, Weird Science, Real Genius, underrated, by the way. It's a very good movie. You have also from 1985, Better Off Dead, and then Teen Wolf, which is another classic, which I must have watched a million times. Believe it or not, I get to 1986. Pretty in Pink is in 1986. I have not watched that movie all the way through. I don't know if I've watched it all the way through a single time. And I know it carries a very popular spot in that 80s teen genre. Also in 1986 was maybe a lesser known movie, Lucas, very early Charlie Sheen in that movie. I liked it. There was football involved with it in a different way. 1986 also included Ferris Bueller's Day Off and then One Crazy Summer, both classics. 1987 included Mannequin, Can't Buy Me Love, Less Than Zero getting a little more serious in nature. 1988 had Johnny Be Good, maybe one of the worst of those 80s movies. 1989 had a very underrated movie that's now on Broadway, Heathers. And then also in 1989, you had Say Anything, which was just a classic. So that's what this movie compares against. Boy, I could do a rewind session on just about any one of those movies, and maybe I will throughout the summer. We'll see. But yeah, it's an interesting comparison, this movie to those. So I talked about the Steel City. This movie was filmed in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and it was capturing the atmosphere of a struggling Rust Belt steel town. The locations included the former campus of Greater Johnstown High School, along with Point Stadium, which was on the grounds of that high school. And it also included local residential streets in East Conemaugh. I think I'm saying that right. Conemaugh? It might be Conemaugh. It must be a suburb of Johnstown. Ampipe High School, which was in this movie, is fictitious. It doesn't exist. But it is also the name of my fantasy football team. I thought it was a good idea. I love this movie. Yeah, my fantasy football team is Ampipe, the Ampipe Bulldogs. The Georgievich House is located at the intersection of Oak Street and 5th Street in East Conemaugh, PA. Coach Nickerson's house is situated on Erickson Drive in the Richland section of Johnstown. And then the mill scenes were filmed at the Cambria Iron Works. So really good locations. It really had this dark, foggy, rainy vibe throughout, and the setting was just very special for this movie. So let's talk about early Tom Cruise. This is very early Tom Cruise, and you can feel it immediately. He's not yet a star. He's becoming one, but he's not there yet. And the hunger, that edge, is all over his performance. Cruise plays Stefan Georgievich, a high school football player who knows that his talent gives him leverage, but only a little. He's intense, restless, always moving. He's running routes, running through town, running away from the future he's afraid of. What's striking watching this now is how physical the performance is. Cruise commits fully to the football scenes. He looks like an athlete, he moves like one. There's no irony here, no wink to the audience. In fact, he played most of the roles himself. He actually sustained a concussion during filming while playing some of the football scenes. Maybe most importantly, this might be the most working class character Tom Cruise ever played. There's no safety net here, no backup plan. Stefan isn't choosing risk. Risk is already his environment. He doesn't want to be great. He just wants to get out. And that's littered throughout the movie. That desire, wanting something bigger than the place you're from, is the engine of the whole movie. It's simple, but it's powerful. And it's personal for a lot of people who've ever felt boxed in by geography or circumstance. This performance sits in what I think of as kind of the first phase of Tom Cruise's career. It's that hungry outlier phase. And what's fascinating is how short this phase actually is. It's almost in kind of a blink of the eye of his career. But it is essential. These characters aren't winning yet. They're scrambling, they're proving, they're frustrated. And Cruise brings a nervous energy to them that he largely leaves behind once he becomes a full-fledged movie star. This is before Top Gun, before Rain Man, before the confidence and control. His early films like this one, along with The Outsiders, Taps, Risky Business, Cruise often plays characters who aren't chasing greatness, but they're chasing escape. And All the Right Moves, again, might be the purest version of that. Later, Tom Cruise characters choose danger. They step into the fire. But Stefan Djordjevic doesn't choose that. His fire's kind of already there. And that's what makes his performance feel really grounded. So let's talk about football in this movie. Football is leverage. It's not football as glory. This is where All the Right Moves separates itself from most football movies. Football here isn't aspirational. It's more, I'll say, transactional. Coach Nickerson isn't a cartoon villain. He's part of a system, and scholarships are his currency. Playing time is leverage, and injuries have become bargaining chips. And everyone understands the deal here. The dream isn't the NFL. The dream is a scholarship, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to leave town. Possibly. Football is simply the narrow doorway that might lead to something bigger. And that's the quiet truth at the heart of this movie. Football isn't the goal, escape is. And that's why the conflict feels so real. When Stefan pushes back against the coach, it's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's kind of a panic. It's that fear of being stuck. And you can see it clearly in this movie. It resonates with anyone who played sports, not because they love the game, but because it represented opportunity, a way to be seen, a way to be valued, a way to be, maybe, I don't know, maybe move on to something bigger. And the movie never lets you forget that and how fragile that plan really is. There's no illusion that football will save anybody. It might help, but it can just as easily trap you. The movie introduces us to Leah Thompson's character, and that's an essential part of this story. She isn't just the girlfriend, like so many, I'll say, teen movies of the 80s have just the girlfriend out there. She's ambitious, observant, and fully aware of the limits of the town. She wants out too. She talks about it. She understands the cost of chasing that dream. She is smart behind her years in this movie and seeks something bigger for Stefan. Their relationship works because it feels fragile. Neither of them have certainty, and that uncertainty hangs over every interaction. There's not planning a future, they're imagining one, and that difference kind of matters in this film. There's a real affection, there's a real intimacy between the two, but also real fear. Love doesn't magically solve the problem of where you're going to end up. So, this again puts the movie closer to Fast Times at Ridgemount High, dare I say, than the more idealized team romances of the decade. The emotions are adult, even if the characters are young. And I want to explain that. Fast Times at Ridgemount High feels like maybe just this immature teen movie, but there are some real scenes there, real gravity in that movie with some of the characters. So, in this movie, I do like to think that Leah Thompson, Tom Cruise, their characters reconnect after college in some way, just because of how mature she is, maybe how immature Steph is, and hopefully the college experience gives him some of that maturity and they end up coming together in the end. At least that's what I like to think. Let's talk about behind the scenes a little bit. All the Right Moves occupies an interesting place in 80s cinema. This is a Tom Cruise performance just uh, before his superstardom. We talked about that. Risky Business and Top Gun are right around the corner. And you can see kind of his rawness in this movie, but it's coming together a little bit. The decision to film this in a real steel town adds to the authenticity. The environment doesn't feel staged, it feels lived in. The choice contributes to why the movie feels heavier than its peers. I think the fact that it's raining in so many of these scenes just makes it feel that much darker and an added sense of drama to it. The heaviness may be why the film faded from the cultural spotlight so quickly. It wasn't flashy, it didn't offer comfort, it didn't give audience the release they often want to see from teen movies. This teen movie, it wasn't forgotten because it was bad, it was forgotten because it was honest. It was released to favorable reviews. Rotten Tomatoes, it wasn't a great score, but 61% on Rotten Tomatoes isn't terrible. Early reviews of the movie, Janet Maslin of the New York Times called it a well made but sugar coated working class fable about a football star. Roger Ebert, someone I respect, of the Chicago Sun-Times, gave it a 3 out of 4 stars and wrote, "Two people finally tell each other the truth." This is, of course, an astonishing breakthrough in movies about teenagers, and All the Right Moves deserves it. Locally, Ed Blank of the Pittsburgh Press saw it as flawed, but did capture the look of Johnstown, gave it a little bit of credit there. Marilyn Urocchio of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette rated it as elementary but uplifting. So when you look at the cast of the movie, I talked a lot about Tom Cruise. I talked a little bit about Leah Thompson. You know, it's funny. I was reading yesterday, there is a nude scene between Tom Cruise and Leah Thompson. Leah Thompson almost didn't try out for the role because she was turned off by the nude scene, but they gave her the role anyway, even though she didn't try out for it. Tom Cruise really helped her along with that. He said, "Look, if you're gonna film a nude scene together with me, I'm going to go completely nude as well to make you feel safer and better." And she still gives him credit to this day for doing that. Leah Thompson, she's been in a lot of different TV shows. She was in Jaws 3D, if you remember that one. But she was also in the Back to the Future series, if you remember that. Yeah, big actor of the 80s. Craig T. Nelson, this was his first coaching gig before playing coach in Coach, as many of us probably remember. He was also the dad on Poltergeist, if you can remember that. Chris Penn was in this movie. Chris Penn, his character was Brian Riley. He was Steph Georgevich's best friend in the movie. He too seeks escape. They're kind of have this pact together. They're going to get scholarships. They're going to get out of there. Well, Chris gets his girlfriend pregnant, and even though he had a scholarship offer to USC, he passes on the scholarship offer to raise the child with his girlfriend. Chris Penn, this was an early movie for Chris Penn. Of course, he is Sean Penn's brother. He won a Golden Globe in 1994 for the movie Shortcuts. The Venice Film Festival, he also won an award for Shortcuts. And for 1996, he was the winner for Best Supporting Performer in the movie Funeral. And he passed away in 2006. A little bit of, I think, of a troubled life, but yeah, played good part in this movie. Also interesting, Leon Shadow. There's a character Shadow in the film. He's one of the football players. He's played by Leon. Leon doesn't have a last name. It's just Leon. But this guy played in Cool Runnings, Little Richard, The Temptations, and Above the Rim. So I thought that was interesting. And then also Vinny Salavucci, who fumbles the ball, right, in the Walnut Heights game, big fumble. Also gets arrested for armed robbery. He's played by Paul Carafotes, and he is just littered with all kinds of acting in TV shows. You name it, it's like he's done it. So I thought that was interesting. If you look back at 1983, there were some really good movies in 1983. If you look at the top 5 grossing movies of 83, it starts with Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. Was released on May 25th of 1983, $59 million gross. Pretty remarkable. Number 2 was Tootsie, that came in at a little more than half of that amount, 136.3 million gross. That was actually released, in fairness, that was released in December of 1982, but we pull it forward in 83 to get all of its gross barely in this list. Flashdance was released on April 15th of 83. That grossed 90 million. It was the third highest grossing movie of the 80s, of 1983, I should say. Trading Places came in at number 4, $90 million gross. That again was released in June of 1983, June 8th to be exact. And then War Games, Matthew Broderick, $74.4 million gross. That was released June of 3rd of 1983 as well. All the Right Moves did not finish in the top 5. In fact, you have to go all the way down to number 41. It grossed 17.2 million. It was released in October 21st of 1983. I like to look at the films that were released around that time just to see how it compares. So again, All the Right Moves was number 41. Within the 15 days before and 15 days after that was released, a couple movies, Never Say Never Again was released, 53.5 million. That was the 12th highest grossing film. You also had The Dead Zone, 20.8 million, ranked number 35 in 1983. Richard Pryor, Here and Now, number 48 at 16.2 million. So these are all behind All the Right Moves. Now, it was only of the ones that were released around that 15-day period before and after, only Never Say Never Again and The Dead Zone ranked above All the Right Moves. So Richard Pryor, we talked about. The Right Stuff, number 58, was released around the same time, grossed $13.7 million. The Smurfs and the Magic Flute, I don't remember that one, but that was number 74 at 11.2 million. Deal of the Century was number 66 at 10.4 million. Never Cry Wolf was number 85 at 7.5 million. The Osterman Weekend, 6.5 million. That came in at number 94. Under Fire, 5.7 million, came in at number 99. Romantic Comedy at 5.1 million came in at number 104. And by the way, like I said, these are just movies released 15 days before or 15 days after All the Right Moves, just to see what it was competing against. The last couple here, Testament, came in at 1.5 million. That was number 138. Running Brave, 1.2 million, came in at number 147. And then you have Possessions at 1.1 million, The Wicked Lady at 600,000, Experience Preferred, 441,000, Going Berserk, 23,000, and then finally The Prey came in at $50,000. Those, I hope they didn't invest a lot in those movies. I will say that. So just to close it up here, I've seen All the Right Moves a lot of times, and every time it just hits the same nerve. Not because of the football per se, and it's not because the plot is complicated. It isn't. It's a pretty short movie. It's like an hour and a half running time. The story's simple. It's about people who know they want something bigger than the place they're in, but don't yet know how to get there. That feeling of wanting and wanting more is timeless. In some ways, maybe we've all experienced it somehow. This weekend, we'll watch football at the highest level. Not just this weekend, we'll watch it today at the highest level. And it's going to be on perfect fields, not the mud-ridden fields that the practices were on in this movie. It's going to have perfect lighting, enormous stakes. But most people who ever played the game lived something much closer to All the Right Moves. Football is pressure. Football is leverage. Football is a possible way out. And again, that's why this movie works. It doesn't mythologize, if that's a word, mythologize the game. It humanizes it. It understands that sometimes the biggest dream isn't winning, it's leaving. And that's a wrap. That's a wrap on All the Right Moves. If you haven't seen it, I challenge you to watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. If nothing else, you'll get a really good view of a very early Tom Cruise. And I think you, again, will appreciate it. So that's a wrap for the Rewind Sessions football specials. Again, we looked at some really good movies, right? We started with Rudy. We went to North Dallas 40. We went to The Longest Yard, and we finished up with All the Right Moves. So, All the Right Moves was definitely the one that I watched the most in my life. Like I said, probably 100 times. I really hope that Chet McQuaid listens to this. I'm going to have to find him and tell him to listen to this because I know he will appreciate it and maybe watch this podcast as many times as we watch the movie. But it was good to do this, and I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoy watching some of these movies back again. It had been a while since I watched any of these movies, so I really appreciated that. I hope you listen to this podcast, and whether you listen to it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, make sure you click subscribe in all of those forms, and make sure you like this episode if you did enjoy it. I really appreciate that. Please follow me again on social media, X and Instagram. It's at TellusEllisHQ is how you can find me. On YouTube, it's at TellusEllis Media. Again, subscribe, click the thumbs up button. I would appreciate that. And then if you have any questions on this episode or would like to join the podcast, I mean, we've had several people join now, Buckler and Murphy. Murph is pretty much a regular on the football side. Buckler comes in and out. I think we're going to do more together. And then you have the Bush family who joined me on the wrestling, and I think we're going to do that again. So let me know. Sports, entertainment, pop culture. Would love to talk to you about it. Again, my email address is jamie@tellusellis.com. Thanks for joining, and I hope you enjoyed the show.